Hello everyone, I'm Aurora CDVA, the VTuber that has to go faster on his upload game! Sonic Frontiers is many things. The game that returned the Sonic franchise to a proper quality of games, the introduction of Sage, a character that quickly became a fan favorite, and the hardest hitting songs of the entire franchise. And with a game recently smashing past the 5 million copies sold, I ask myself, why do I love this game so much? What makes this game so special to warrant a dedicated video? Sonic Frontiers, in terms of gameplay, is the most balanced of the entire series. But why did I impose such an objective statement immediately? For that, let's establish how normally a Sonic game plays. Sonic games are usually linear, either being stage-focused, like the classic 2D games, or story-focused, where once you beat the level, you need to go and select the next one, either from a gigantic hub, where you need to solve a puzzle to go unlock the next level like in the first adventure game, or a strict level select like Sonic Forces. The levels are the DNA of the series, with a primary focus on speed and optimization to shave off time, a little bit more of memorization also. But usually, Sonic games are only the levels. As I said, this isn't a problem. The levels are why Sonic is beloved in the first place. But Sonic Frontiers decided to approach this core aspect in a completely different way. The open zone design. Open zone games are a more limited game design compared to open worlds, having separated game maps that you unlock as you progress the game. But each of these maps you have access to are completely open for you to run around and have fun. The levels and story progression still need key items that you need to grab in order to progress. But because of this open design, there's never a specific order of progression. You need to defeat mini-bosses to obtain gears for the portals that lead to classic Sonic levels. You need to play at least some portal levels to gather keys for the Chaos Emeralds. And you need to gather hearts to unlock story progression with the characters in order to eventually unlock the final boss battle of the island, other than the secondary dialogue options with Sage and the character of that island. Those being scattered around the island behind mini-platforming challenges integrated in the map itself, especially fighting the various enemies and mini-bosses as you move around from location to location. The combat is not complex at all. It's actually incredibly simple and to the point, but not only it has options to unlock the more peculiar moves, making the fights fast and reactive, focusing less on endless combos where you spam the attack button, but to understand how each of the enemies moves, so you can move around in their moveset and counter them appropriately, so you can punish them with your moves. This approach to a core game design of the open zone is incredible, because it doesn't dictate the flow of the game, it lets you decide how your gameplay goes. I, for example, love unlocking the map of the island immediately, in order to unlock the full map and to fully access everything with a teleport to the portals, alternating between mini-bosses, story progression and the classic Sonic levels. This game is also aware that not everyone will love its very aspect, and it leaves the player with plenty of farm options in order to progress the game normally without doing aspects of the game you don't like. You can find treasure chests that you can unveil with the cyber loop everywhere, a note I'll discuss later, but most importantly, the fishing minigame. One of the very few fishing minigames in video games that I like. I love it in this game. But the core thing that I love about this game is that Most of the characters' writing is incredible. In the previous years of a franchise, the Sonic games were written by someone who never interacted with the franchise, and it showed. The characters were flanderized beyond belief and boiled down to their superficial traits. In this game, not only the characters are written with their whole character in mind, but they also address their previous bad writing, reflecting on how to move forward from now on. Now, am I claiming that the writing is perfect? No. There's a lot that is lost to translation from Japanese to English. And I do have a gripe on how Ian Flynn writes Amy specifically, but compared to what we had before, this was an incredible breath of fresh air. And even if I don't like early Amy writing from Sonic Frontiers, I can see in the comics that she had an incredible grow up, and she is getting closer to her real self. But most importantly, they nailed the writing of her new character, Sage, that quickly became a fan favorite of the fandom and a main staple of the series ever since. Another addition, unique to Sonic Frontiers, is the Cyber Loop, which not only functions as a portable puzzle button or emergency ring dispenser or farming resources, with a secret infinite turbo trick built in, but it's also another element for the combat of the game, being able to incapacitate enemies for a short period of time and expanding a little bit of the complexity of an otherwise very simple game, with it also being able to unlock extra key items if you are struggling to farming resources with treasure chests, as I mentioned before. Another thing they did was to introduce free expansions to include stuff they weren't able to in the first release of a game due to time constraints. Like musical notes to unlock songs for the game, as you play through the island normally. A somewhat faulty inclusion since you can unlock songs for the end of the game, like the final boss song I'm Here at the start of the game. But it's added like a cute extra to the game, and it added something to do in the fourth island, which was only an in-between thing full of towers to unlock with nothing explorable in between. Oh, and they introduced a photo mode and the time trial score thing is to if you want the spin dash. I personally don't like either of those things, but it's a matter of personal taste and not objective problems. But my favorite moment of the game, the one iconic to Sonic Frontiers that overshadows any other game in the franchise, every single boss of every single island. Not only they're incredibly fun and addicting to do with their powerless stage where you need to understand how to get to the final Chaos Emerald, but the music is so excellent, it speaks to my very soul. I cannot describe how much hype every single song is in this game. And not only that, they made Super Sonic fun and relevant. In the previous game, Super Sonic was either a final boss thing or an extra bonus you needed to work your ass off. The most integration I've seen was unlocking in advance for a true ending, so you could also have a little bit of a game as Super Sonic and basically have fun. But otherwise, usually Super Sonic was a fun extra, but gameplay wise nothing much. Here, once you unlock Super Sonic, you unlock the fight itself. And not only the song explodes in pure hype and aura, these boss fights also unlock some opportunities if you use the Cyber Loop onto the bosses, which immobilize them, creating an opportunity to combo to our heart's content, and most importantly, they're just fun! When I first played Sonic Frontiers and Undefeatable drop as the fight against Giganto started, was the moment I understood that this game was special. And no game before or after in the franchise came even close to the heavenly feeling as I traded blows with the Titans. This is an incredible game that I dearly love with all of my heart. But even though Sonic Frontiers is an incredible game, it's also full of flaws, and these flaws need to be addressed. Before I move to address my problem with this game, let me address one many had that I don't really personally care about, but we need to address it. The popping in and out of existence of many platforms. Technically speaking, they justified in law reason why, with the platforms and structures being a part of a cyberspace, so those are not really there in the first place, but it can be challenging and breaking the immersion of the islands to see as you play. One more pressing issue is a choice when starting a new save file, when the game asks you in what style of gameplay you want to play, with one more centered around going fast and one for slow and platforming more precisely. This slow option is a scam! These settings only adjust the various movement options in the menu, something you can manually do at any point of the game, but the slow and platforming style that the game proposes you makes Sonic incredibly slippery, turning his turning speed to a crawl, forcing you to do wide arcs to turn around, and when doing precise platforming where every inch counts, I'll let you guess what happens next. And many like me chose this option, but as I said, this only modifies the slides in the menu, so you can always adjust them to your liking. One last nitpick when I'm done: the puzzles that require you to be done at night suck. They are meant to be discovered immediately, pinpointed for later, and while you screw around the map doing all sorts of things to pass time, return at night. But if you discover one of these last when you are done doing things around the map of the island, then you have to wait since you can't change the time manually for some inexplicable reason. Do you know how much time you need to wait? I wrote 1/4 of the script while I was waiting. But as I said, they're designed to be discovered immediately and unlocked after you fuck around the map, so no big deal. Now we can finally talk about the main problems of Sonic Frontiers, things that did impact my enjoyment of the game. This is the worst looking Sonic game I have ever played. The environment is hyper realistic, every color looks dead or so much depressed that they want to die, and everything on the island clashes with Sonic too much. Now, I will not stop on this topic too much, because I would need to dedicate a video on why realistic graphics are misused in modern gaming. But to make a long story short, realistic graphics work best in settings that are at least somewhat realistic, like the Uncharted franchise and The Last of Us. Unrealistic settings like Monster Hunter World and Sonic Frontiers clash with their characters and creatures, creating a sense of alienation or uncanny valley. Another horrible thing they implemented is the parry ability. I don't personally like parries in video games. They usually stop the natural flow of combat by making you wait for a parryable attack with a finger on the dedicated parry button. This is another topic to be fully explored in another video, especially since my personal disdain of the parry mechanics is only a personal nitpick, to be honest. I cannot pretend that you all think like me. But in this game they made it their mission to make the worst parry I have ever seen in a video game period, by virtue of making it broken. As an example, look at this. The first mini-boss of a game. I made an attempt spamming attacks without dodging to showcase how ineffective this strategy is, since the game expects you to dodge and to not spam attacks at random. You need to exercise critical thinking if you do not want to get punished by enemy attacks. Or at least you would have to, but if you instead do a couple of attacks and then as soon as the enemy even begins to think about doing an attack, you hold the parry button, and then Sonic stops immediately and waits to parry the attack. And once parried, you can punish at your heart's content without an issue. Just so you can understand why this mechanic is busted and worthless, let me showcase this one thing real quick. See what I mean? Or if you unlock the finisher upgrade, you can do your best Sonic Spider-Man impression and melt health bars with it after a successful parry, making the mini-bosses without parryable attacks the only challenges of this game. But the one thing I absolutely hate of this game, and I skip it every single time, it's the final free expansion relegated to an alternative final chapter to a final island of the game. Before I say what's bad about it, let me be fair about its positive inclusions. I love that the characters are being able to do something to participate in Sonic's effort to stop the end. And I love the moveset. The animations are spectacular and in character, and this made me wish for a Sonic game where, ironically enough, We do not get to play as Sonic. Let his friends branch off and have their own adventures. Okay, have I sung its praises enough? Okay, now I can legally stop playing nice. This extra chapter fucking sucks. You see, when developing the final chapter, Sonic Team made one of the worst mistakes they could have ever done. Listen to the Sonic fandom, which back then consisted of people bitching about how easy the game is. Okay, fair enough, said the Sonic team, as they cranked the difficulty of the extra chapter to impossible levels. The towers have some of the most precise platforming I have ever seen, the mini-bosses have been hyper-balanced to impossible levels, and in order to assess the final boss, you need to do a boss rush of the various titans where you need to execute perfect parries that has been balanced, and now you need to execute them with perfect precision in order to make them work, something they should have done for the base game, in order to unlock the final boss of the extra chapter with Super Duper Sonic. But the one thing I will never forgive this chapter is wasting everyone's time, because it's useless. This whole extra final chapter was made with a goal to rewrite the ending of Sonic Frontiers, which was heavily rushed because Sega didn't give a shit. But when you sit down and see the endings, you realize that they're identical! In the OG ending, Sonic initiates the final confrontation with the End, explodes it, and manages to free his friends from cyberspace, while Eggman takes his newfound daughter and goes away. In the new ending, Sonic initiates the final confrontation with the End, explodes it, and manages to free his friends from cyberspace, while Eggman takes his newfound daughter and goes away. Seems familiar? The only differences are that Eggman doesn't need to recover Sage in a second moment after the credits, and that Sonic defeats the End with the help of everyone involved, but that's about it. Playing the entirety of the extra chapters only for a different ending is completely useless. You really need to hate bullet hells for this to be worth it. Its only saving grace is that it's completely optional. You need to go out of your way to play this chapter by your own volition, something you can avoid without a single problem. And do you want to hear the best bit? Do you want to hear the best bit? The same people that complained about the base game being too easy then complained about the extra chapter being too hard. So yeah, despite this being one of my favorite Sonic games, this is not even remotely perfect. And as a matter of fact, this isn't my favorite Sonic game ever made. They made a better version of this game later on. Shadow Generations, a side game in Sonic per Shadow Generation, Best Ship, bundled with a feature side game dedicated on Shadow that takes the best bits from Sonic Frontiers, but in a dedicated world without realistic graphics, easy to look at intentionally, since it's all unnaturally wide since we're beyond the boundaries of time, with an incredible story to boot, and every positive element from Sonic Frontiers translated into this little experience, making this my favorite Sonic game of all time. But if Sonic Frontiers is not my favorite game ever, then why did I dedicate a game to this game specifically? Because this may not be the most polished game ever made, or the best in the franchise, but this is the single most important game of Sonic. If you like the show, please like, comment and subscribe. A little bit of support goes a long way. It's not a secret that for a considerable amount of time, the Sonic franchise was on a downhill in terms of quality. Sonic 06 was the first real failure of a franchise, one that haunted its legacy to this day. IGN made their personal mission to hate Sonic because of it, downright making bullshit up, like saying that Sonic never had good games in the first place for clickbait, and even self-sabotaging their own reviews to paint the game in a worse light than it is in reality. And as I said before, the character writing for a while was managed by people who never interacted with the franchise, nor did they care for it, writing the characters as standardized stereotypes of their archetypes. And the games themselves were no better, as Sega forced the Sonic team on a tight schedule, releasing the games as incomplete messes. The franchise was on its last legs, and Sonic was going to be terminated. The Sonic team had one last chance for the franchise: Sonic Frontiers. This was their last effort to reinstate Sonic the Hedgehog, to save it from failure, one last chance to bounce back from the downhill before it crashed and burned. One last game intended to either save the franchise or send it off with one last try. And they were successful. Sonic Frontiers was able to salvage the reputation of Sonic. Now, after years of this game being back, we have comics made by IDW, several new games with others in development, and even full of spectacular animations. This game didn't just sell well, it saved the franchise. If it weren't for this game, we would be talking about Sonic in the past tense by now. Maybe see some merchandise or spin-offs as Sega tries to capitalize on their IP and things like that. And instead, we're in the timeline where Sonic is still around and has no sign of going away anytime soon. I'm not saying this game is exempt of criticism, or that it's perfect. I'm the first to recognize its flaws. Oh gosh damn it, it's still bearing! But that doesn't change the fact that this game is the most important of them all, giving the franchise a much needed second wind and hopes for the future. Sonic is only at the beginning of this one-way dream. Thank you for watching. Do you guys have a favorite Sonic game? And if yes, which one it is? But as for me today, this is all. See you next time!